Port Charles seems to have cameras nowhere, even though we live in a society where there is now cameras everywhere. But I guess Port Charles is the exception, although you would think it wouldn't be since there's been such high mob activity in the city of Port Charles for so long now. You would think they would have cameras everywhere. Good morning, everybody. Here to talk about yesterday's General Hospital episode in what will likely be a quick review of yesterday's episode. It was a Wednesday episode, and it was definitely a filler Wednesday episode, to say the least. It's episodes like yesterday that will probably be why I eventually review General Hospital as a weekly thing rather than a daily thing. Although I'm going to try and hang on till through May sweeps, still doing it daily. But when Love Island starts and Big Brother starts, which I like to cover, might have to move General Hospital to a weekly review rather than a daily review, at least for a while. Let's talk about the only thing that I felt like moved a bit of story along yesterday, and that was Britt learning about Rocco being at the pier, learning that he's the one that shot Colum. It's kind of how our last episode ended, though. And it was kind of just Rocco retelling things that we as a viewer already saw, so it wasn't exactly, riveting scenes. But I think it is good that Britt now knows this, and I think it was used to make Britt want to be able to continue the project for Colum, because in Tuesday's episode she was telling Lucas about how she has kind of lost the wanting to do the project. She was kind of giving up or wanting to give up and just let Huntington's disease kind of take its course with her. But I think after learning that Rocco can also be in trouble now because if Colum finds out that Rocco shot him, Colum's going to go after Rocco too. And I think we are seeing that Britt really does care about Rocco here. Because at the same time, Joss and Lulu were having scenes together, kind of discussing Nathan and Britt and Rocco. It started with Jocelyn recalling seeing Nathan leaving Colum's room. And it seems as though Joss is like one of the only people being suspicious that Nathan is just able to retake his life after being gone for 7 years and thought to be dead. And he's just really doing such a wonderful job getting reacclimated with his old life. But I'm glad at least one character on the show is suspicious of Nathan being able to just be the same person and just get back into his job so quickly. Because, we know that it's not so Nathan, a.k.a. Cassius, but nobody else does, and nobody else even has a suspicion. Of course not clueless Dante has that suspicion, but at least Joss does. But anyway, Joss and Lulu were discussing Nathan and how Joss made things awkward with Not So Nathan when they had their conversation at the gym. She made it awkward by bringing up Faison. They also discussed how Lulu hates Britt and how that feeling is mutual. Lulu told Joss that her hate for Britt is not because of Nathan, but because of Rocco, and how Lulu gets upset when Rocco dismisses her when she tries to tell Rocco how dangerous Britt can be. So we are kind of probably building towards something where Britt is going to end up helping Rocco with something, and maybe that's going to loosen the hatred that Lulu has for Britt. We also had a few episodes back where Britt tried to warn Lulu about Not So Nathan. It's the writers trying to make us see that Britt has changed and maybe we should like her more. I still don't, and I still don't like how one of the main stories on the show kind of revolves around her, but nonetheless. Anyways, Lulu told Joss that Nathan has been a big help and has been reliable. And Joss brought up how it's a miracle how Nathan could just pick up his past life so smoothly. So once again, good to see that at least one character in Jocelyn is suspicious of Cassius, aka Not So Nathan. Nathan was working with Dante today. They were at first discussing if there was a lead on the other car that may have been involved with Jordan and Curtis' accident. I still think this storyline is being written awfully. It's just, I don't know if it's half-assed. I don't know if they're writing it in a way so that if Brooklyn ends up being the other driver, she doesn't look too bad, even though she was drinking and driving, because she didn't cause the accident, because they like to keep Brooklyn as Saint Brooklyn on the show these days, and it's not a good thing, actually. It has made Brooklyn a character that I don't like watching on the show. And that's not something I would have said 3-4 years ago when I was watching consistently back then. Anyway, they talked about that. They talked about how there was no cameras for that accident. It's convenient to a lot of these plots, which is, once again, sometimes a problem I have with extreme plot-driven writing. A lot of the plots on General Hospital only work because Port Charles seems to have cameras nowhere, even though we live in a society where there is now cameras everywhere. But I guess Port Charles is the exception, although you would think it wouldn't be, since there's been such high mob activity in the city of Port Charles for so long now. You would think they would have cameras everywhere, but that is where we always have to suspend our disbelief with these stories. But then Dante and Not So Nathan had a meeting of the minds about Marco's killer, and I don't think they really got anywhere. Not surprised with those two at the cop shop, especially Dante, who is supposed to be the leader there. Then they ended up discussing how Nathan and Lulu are getting close and how Dante's telling him he doesn't need his permission to date Lulu. There is, I guess, some potential drama in the future when it comes out that this isn't Nathan and it's really Cassius, and maybe Lulu's going to feel some kind of way, and Dante should also feel some kind of way. But there's not really any stakes with that story right now to get me interested to get there. And then the other main storyline on yesterday, it just irks me. I talked about it yesterday, about this whole Jordan being in the accident storyline, where she just seems so concerned about this scar on her face. Immediately after waking up, after almost dying, it seems like her biggest concern is the scar on her face. I did have a comment yesterday from, let me try and find it, sorry, Diary of a Sing, who said, so I wouldn't consider myself a vain person, but this person in the comments did have a surgery when they were 16 and it resulted in scars on their chest. And Diary of a Sing said, I used to be very self-conscious of it and even needed therapy after surgery. It is quite common for people, even those not vain, to have some amount of reaction and trauma about surgery and scarring, which is a fair statement. I get what you're saying. Like I said yesterday, if I had a scar on my face, I would feel some kind of way. My problem with the story, like I said in the comments, is that Jordan's trauma about the scar is ridiculous to me so far, because she has had no trauma that she could have died. And I feel like that should have took precedent at first. I feel like we had one episode where she woke up and found out she could have died. And then by the end of the very next episode, she was more concerned about the scar on her face. And it's just not realistic to me. It's very soap opera in a way, but it's like too over the top, too soon for me to like jive with the story. And another commenter yesterday, I want to say Robbie Casey said, GH writers do not want to write stories for General Hospital's black characters, couples, interracial couples. So sad. Where's Trina, TJ, Valerie Spencer, Molly and TJ, Ethan and Maya, Christine and Valerie. And yeah, I think this Jordan storyline kind of speaks to the show not having the effort put into their black characters. It just seems like they always want to have a quad triangle with Portia, Jordan, Curtis, and now Isaiah, and that's about it. And so they gave this side story for Jordan with no real effort into it, because not only is the storyline half-assed from the other driver sense, where it's more looking like it's Jordan's fault for the accident, even though Curtis is also to blame, but they don't write that into the storyline so far. Curtis doesn't even feel bad that he was the one getting frisky with Jordan before the accident. It's not a very well-written story. I don't feel the effort in the story, and so I'm just not connecting with the story whatsoever. And Curtis is a very miserable character in general, because him going at Isaiah so hard is annoying as it is. But the fact that he already is to kind of blame for causing the accident for being frisky, and we're not getting that side of the story, makes Curtis more annoying to me. And then, furthermore, I feel like at the end of the episode, Dante called Curtis and said that there was black paint in the accident, and Curtis realizes that Isaiah drives a black car, and so he's jumping to conclusions that it's Isaiah. It's just more plot-driven writing from the show, which is the show, what the show does. The whole show is plot-driven writing, but the effort's not here in this storyline, and so it is falling flat. And so I agree with a lot of the comments yesterday, but I don't think that the story has good writing whatsoever, and it is because they don't put the effort in the storylines with their black characters, and they are afraid of interracial couples. That was clear with Trina and Spencer when that happened. So yeah, the only other story that went on yesterday was Gio and Emma. Those two bores were talking about how they're going to go to NYC and be involved with the Aladdin play, or see the Aladdin play on Broadway. I know General Hospital is like having a crossover with the Aladdin Broadway play. It's going to be fast forward material for me, though, I fear.